In a strange world where people live under a system that grants them a blessing known as rank, which is bestowed upon them when they turn 10, a boy named Errol awaited his expected day. The rank determines a person's future and role in life. On this day, his parents and sister celebrated his 10th birthday, imagining the impressive rank he would receive, while he seemed indifferent to the whole system. After breakfast, the family hurried to the place where the priest stood before the audience, announcing the ranks of the children one by one. Some became blacksmiths, others cooks. His sister reminded him that ranks are influenced by the parents' ranks, and since his mother had reached the rank of sword saint and his father was a great sorcerer, he must be destined for something amazing. When his turn came, he walked calmly toward the priest amidst the whispers of the crowd, curious to know what legendary rank this son of heroes would receive. The priest placed his hand on Errol's forehead, waiting for the light that would announce the rank, but nothing happened. The man became flustered, looked at him sadly, and informed him that he was born without a rank. Days passed during which his parents tried to lift his spirits, assuring him he wouldn't have to look for a job and could stay with them as long as he wanted. However, the boy was not troubled by this. He explained to them that since his childhood, he had been training in the art of swordsmanship, honing his skills through continuous practice under his strong mother's supervision. He knew that having a rank as a swordsman would make his path easier, but even without it, he could carve his way with his sword and effort. His family found comfort in that, while he went out to rest a bit and heard a commotion coming from the training ground. He approached to see two boys sparring, noticing their weak fundamentals, but just having ranks made them acceptable fighters. They noticed him and asked him why he was standing there, so he told them he came to train. They laughed mockingly, claiming that someone without a rank could not spar with real fighters, and began to boast about their sword moves. Errol showed no admiration and asked if they wanted to spar with him, thinking he was joking. However, they accepted the challenge. Before starting, one of them asked if he had the divine protection that every person is born with to ward off harm, to which he answered yes. At that, his opponent prepared to fight him without fear. However, Errol confidently said that he didn't need such protection to defeat kids like them. The swordsman became enraged and charged at him, striking his sword violently. Errol blocked the attack effortlessly, stunning his opponent, who continued to swing wildly, but the boy skillfully parried every strike. When the second friend intervened, attacking from behind, Errol nimbly jumped out of the way, realizing these boys could not compare to his mother in combat, and facing them together would be more entertaining. He darted toward them swiftly, knocking one down with the handle of his sword to the chin, causing the other to trip over his fallen friend and fall as well. The two sat there, crying and complaining about injustice when a red-haired boy entered the arena, ordering them to shut their mouths and behave as if it were a real battlefield. Had it not been for the protection surrounding them, the defeated boys would have lost their lives in that moment. Errol did not recognize the red-haired boy, but the boy seemed to know him well, stepping forward confidently to challenge him to a public duel. He claimed that his victory over Errol's friends was due to a natural talent inherited from his mother, the Sword Saint, and as long as Errol was without a rank, he would not be able to stand against someone who possessed both rank and official training. He then announced that he was the son of Captain Evans, the leader of the village guards. Errol remembered the captain when he had come to his mother seeking help earlier, but the boy bore no resemblance to his rugged father. The red-haired boy exploded with an angry complaint that people always regarded Errol's mother as the strongest, even though his father was also a seasoned fighter. He wanted to prove that his family was more deserving of glory, and that he would accomplish that by defeating Errol. They squared off, and as soon as the match began, the red-haired boy charged aggressively, eager to end the fight quickly. However, Errol, accustomed to relentless training with his mother, met the attacks with a solid defense and matching speed, turning their rapid movements into a stunning spectacle for the astonished boys on the ground. Errol recognized that his opponent was stronger than the previous two, but fought with a rage that made him chaotic, so Errol watched for a chance to strike. But the red-haired boy anticipated his move and launched a double aerial strike. Errol blocked one, while the other hit him in the chest and knocked him down. He was stunned by that amazing blow, realizing his opponent had used a skill that could only be learned by someone who had earned a specific rank. Days went by after that defeat, but the fire of determination ignited in his chest once again. He ventured into the forest armed with his sword, standing in front of a training dummy, tearing it apart with blows again and again until he finally succeeded in mimicking the double strike that had defeated him. Just as he was about to rejoice in his achievement, a small goblin lunged at him from the bushes, trying to surprise him. Errol turned quickly and unleashed the double strike, slicing through the goblin and killing it instantly. He felt excitement for gaining the new skill, but a thunderous roar echoed from deep within the forest, shaking his very being. He wanted to rush back to the village to warn the guards, but a cry for help from a boy inside stopped him. Realizing time was not on the side of those caught off guard, he dashed into the woods, hidden until he spotted an injured boy, his opponent with the red hair bleeding heavily, clinging to his sword before a massive opponent that was a huge goblin of a rare breed that usually did not approach villages. He hesitated for a moment between fleeing for help and staying, but he knew the boy would die if he left him. He snuck behind the monster, and just as the goblin was about to deal the final blow to its victim, Errol lunged with a powerful double strike, cleaving the goblin's body and killing it instantly. The red-haired boy stood frozen in place, astonished not just because the danger had faded, but because Errol had managed to execute a skill he had only learned years later with extensive training and the help of his rank. Errol approached him and offered a vial of holy water to treat his wounds. The red-haired boy, filled with curiosity, asked Errol about the secret behind his ability to execute that deadly move. He replied that it wasn't about possessing a rank, but having the skill, strength, and speed necessary to repeat it. He explained that after his previous defeat, he spent a long time analyzing the double strikes and retraining repeatedly until he understood the foundation and became capable of modifying it as he wished. The boy wasn't wasn't totally convinced and challenged him to a new duel. Errol accepted calmly. The two stood opposite each other, and the moment they unleashed their strikes simultaneously, the boy was surprised that Errol not only blocked his attack, but added a third strike that hit him and knocked him down. The son of the captain grew furious, but Errol explained to him that he didn't adhere to any specific technique bounded by limits or constraints, and that his strength and skill were what defined his capabilities, allowing him to increase the number of strikes whenever he had the competency to do so. The boy got up, trying to take revenge in another round, but received a third strike again with even greater force, and fell once more, leading Errol to leave the arena victorious. 5 years passed since that day until Errol decided to embark on a journey to the kingdom of Bria, famous for its swordsmanship, where both his mother and Captain Evans had received their training. He wanted to become the best like them. Along the way, he was accompanied by some travelers, including a strong man with the rank of a barbarian warrior and a woman highly skilled in sword fighting with 2 swords, and they constantly quarreled. The cart driver tried to calm them down, reminding them they were heading to the same place, but the man treated the woman condescendingly, wanting to dismiss her under the pretense that she was only suitable for household chores. Before the argument escalated, the driver shouted for them to prepare for battle, as a group of orcs, led by a giant female leader, appeared before them, intent on wiping them out. 2 children in the cart screamed for help from the warrior, but he cowardly fled, saying that each life was their own responsibility. Then the woman followed him, saying the world does not spare the weak. The driver was left puzzled, wondering if he could save his cart before the enemies reached them, but Errol quietly got out of the cart and approached the monsters without a word. The driver tried to stop him from confronting them, but he ignored him and moved with astonishing agility, stabbing the first orc in the heart with a speed no one could believe. His swift movements continued as he vanished and reappeared among the foes, striking them down one by one until they fell. When he became surrounded on all sides, he astonished everyone with a legendary move known as the Blade Dance, spinning his body rapidly, slicing through everyone around him in one moment. The driver was amazed because that skill was known to be exclusive to female fighters carrying the rank of Sword Princess. But Errol was not bound by such classifications, as he believed that skill should not be limited by gender or title. He then charged at the orc leader, dodged its massive strikes, and leaped over her, driving his sword into her skull until she fell dead. He returned to the cart calmly, asking the driver to continue the journey to Bria. While one of the children inquired about his rank, he simply replied that he had no rank, leaving everyone astonished. He remembered when he had shown his mother his new double strike skill 5 years ago, thinking she was just imagining things until he clarified that he aimed to mimic every skill he witnessed with his eyes. At that moment, she was filled with joy and promised to teach him all the skills known to the sword princesses. Now, in the present, the cart driver woke him up, announcing their arrival at Briasta, the land of swords. Errol stepped out of the cart and saw the city square bustling with fighters, their swords hanging at their waists. He turned to the driver and asked if he was an advanced fighter, to which the man claimed he was just an ordinary driver. However, Errol sensed that someone who knew precise combat moves couldn't just be simple. The driver then admitted he was of the rank of Holy Knights, a prestigious rank, but he had grown tired of fighting and preferred a quiet life disguised as a simple driver. The knight realized this was Errol's first visit to the city and advised him to look for a guild to join, as no fighter could participate in tournaments without formal membership. In this city, duels were a way to prove one's status and earn a living. Errol replied that he wasn't interested in money. He was looking to face the strongest fighter he could find here. The driver warned him about greedy guilds that exploit fighters and ruin their spirit, then turned around and headed back, while Errol continued on, contemplating the banners of the guilds competing for members. As he walked, he bumped into a small blonde girl who clung to him tightly, claiming she was from a famous guild and wanted to recruit him. He found her insistence suspicious and refused her offer, but she was undeterred and kept pressing. Not responding, he asked her about the strongest guild in the city, and she replied with annoyance that the Shadowblade Guild was currently the most prominent, boasting 8 members with fighter ranks. He asked her to guide him to its location and set off. At its gate, the guard directed him to the reception office, which had a long line of aspiring fighters waiting to enter the test. Errol was filled with excitement, wondering what kind of opponents he would face. When it was his turn, the receptionist scoffed at him and called him a rankless nobody, insisting that the guild only accepted high-ranking applicants. He tried to convince her of his ability to pass their test, but she refused to register him. He left sadly, spotting 3 high-ranking fighters entering the hall, received with great respect, but he paid no mind and sought other guilds, only to be met with the same rejection repeatedly. He was worn out by rejection, so he returned to the city center and took out the letter his mother had given him, asking him to seek out his old guild, hoping it might help him. He wondered if she had anticipated the hardships he would face, and felt grateful to her. Just before he opened the letter, the blonde girl appeared again, pressing him to join, pleading with him in a kind tone, pointing to a nearby fancy building claiming it was the headquarters of her guild. He didn't hide his surprise, and she told him that their guild, Dragon's Fangs, had once been the strongest in the country but had weakened significantly recently, wishing to revive its former glory. The name echoed in his memory, reminding him of his mother's stories about the leader of her old guild, the dual-wielding fighter who founded the Dragon's Fangs and named it after his special attack. He pulled out the letter and found the same name written inside. He decided to accompany her, which filled her with joy. However, when he entered the building, he found an old man with one hand lying on a couch, who coldly told him that this guild was over and advised him to leave. The girl told him that this was her father, who had been the second strongest fighter in the city, but had not been the same since he lost his arm. Errol surprised her by announcing his desire to join, which made her ecstatic, and she hurried to prepare the membership contract, which he filled out and returned to her. She read it and then asked why he left the rank section blank. He replied that he had no rank. At that, her anger flared, and she drew her sword, thinking she had been tricked, as she believed him to be a seasoned fighter pretending to be reluctant. But just then, the door opened, and a woman with deep red hair and imposing beauty, named Ray, entered. The girl rushed to her, crying and complaining that this rankless stranger had deceived her to join the guild. Ray immediately focused her attention on the blonde girl, looking at Errol and saying she never thought she would see him here. Errol, looking confused, asked her if she knew him from before, and surprise crossed her face as she informed him that they were from the same village and had trained together when they were kids. He didn't remember at first until he realized the red-haired boy he had fought against many times was actually this girl. The blonde girl was aware of the story and asked Ray if this was the rankless boy who had beaten her long ago, as she thought what she heard about him was merely a legend. But Ray, never forgetting that defeat, challenged him to an immediate duel. The fight began, and Ray launched her dual attack, which Errol thought he could block. However, her strikes pierced through his defense and hit him hard in the chest. He was shocked, and she clarified that she was of the power fighter rank, allowing her to wield a sword 5 times heavier than regular swords, making her blows 5 times more powerful as well. Errol admired her ability to maintain high speed despite her heavy weapon, but he knew her speed could not match his. When she attacked him again, he created a deceptive image of himself that confused her while he appeared behind her and struck her on the back. She tried to repeat her attack, but the outcome was the same, leaving her astonished that he used a technique only higher-ranked fighters could master. Errol realized her sturdy body would not be defeated by ordinary strikes, and she, in turn, tried to end the fight with a finishing blow, but he surprised her with a famous defensive move from his mother's style, causing her to collapse to her knees and ending the duel. At that moment, Ray's demeanor completely changed, warmly welcoming him into the guild, revealing that the guild was drowning in debt, and the only way to save themselves was by fighting in combat tournaments as a team of 3 against guilds with 5 fighters. However, Errol showed no concern, instead filling with enthusiasm at the prospect of facing tougher opponents and honing his skills further. The next morning, he woke up in his new room, reflecting on the events that led him to join the legendary guild that his mother had once been a part of, vowing not to disappoint her and to restore the guild's glory. He went out to the hall and found the blonde girl and Ray sitting by the fireplace, discussing the upcoming tournament. As soon as the blonde girl saw him, she brought him into the conversation, saying that the tournament would start next week and that they were now eligible to participate with 3 members instead of 2. She explained that the tournament would be knockout style with individual matches, and that most guilds would consist of 5 fighters, meaning they would have to defeat more than one opponent to survive the first round. Yet, she remained optimistic, assuring that having 2 ranked fighters in Category B would give them a good balance unless they faced a top-tier fighter. Errol wasn't familiar with these rankings, so he asked her about them. She explained that there were 5 ranks, starting from D for beginners and ending with SSS, which only the elite achieve, and that there were 20 fighters in Briasta who hold this top rank. She boasted that both she and Ray were in rank B, and since Errol had defeated Ray in their match, he was now ranked the same. With their guild having 3 fighters of the same level, they at least had hope to get through the early stages. Then she headed to the kitchen, leaving Errol lost in thought. As Ray was leaving the hall, he stopped her and asked about her abilities as a power fighter. She was still upset about her loss, but replied that one of her skills was strengthening the outer mana shield to block most weak strikes. Errol stayed silent, thinking of a way to learn such a valuable technique, when a new idea suddenly sparked in his mind. Errol asked Ray to strike him with her sword while it was still sheathed. She was surprised and initially refused, but he took her hand, pleading with her to do so. She thought he was suggesting something odd unrelated to training and felt awkward but didn't completely refuse, suggesting they start with something more typical. At that moment, Errol realized their misunderstanding and corrected her, explaining that he wanted her to hit him to teach him how to strengthen his outer mana shield, a useful skill in fights against multiple opponents where there's a higher chance of getting hit. Ray was taken aback by his request and asked if he had lost his mind, insisting that skills were given through divine grace that couldn't be learned by trying. But Errol, having abandoned belief in such notions, told her to stop objecting, reminding her she had seen him gain skills he wasn't born with, like the dual sword strike and the quick dash. She fell silent and decided to try with him just once. They went to the training ground, and she handed him her sword, warning him it was 5 times heavier than any ordinary sword, and that without the power skill, he wouldn't even be able to lift it. But Errol surprised her when he gripped the sword and drew it with a fluid motion, then waved it effortlessly, leaving her astonished, wondering how he could do all this while being rankless and without inherited skills. He replied that he hadn't learned anything without persistence and daily training, and he intended to keep up with naturally talented fighters through his relentless efforts. Ray's expression changed from sharpness to admiration, and she apologized for her mockery, reclaiming her sword and vowing not to go easy on him during training. He agreed, but he tried to joke with her, prompting her to hit him across the face with the handle of her sword while laughing. After a while, the blonde girl rushed into the training ground, panting and flustered, telling them she had discovered the guild they would face, and the news was bad. Their opponent was none other than the Shadowblade Guild, the strongest guild in the city, which included a top-tier fighter led by its famous leader, Gio, known for his cruelty and cunning. However, the blonde girl showed no signs of retreat, instead launching into a passionate speech promising they would give their all to win. She then turned to Errol, who was sprawled on the ground, exhausted after a tough training session, asking if he was still alive. Ray assured her he was fine and that what they were doing was special training, although the blonde girl saw it as her taking out her frustrations on him, nothing more. Errol got up, complaining of hunger after all he had been through, and asked for food. The week flew by with training and preparation until the day of the tournament arrived. People flocked from all over to the grand arena, and Errol stood amazed by the vastness of the place. He heard the blonde girl boiling with rage as she caught whispers mocking their guild, which had collapsed long ago, while Ray tried to calm her down. Errol noticed people betting on the teams and asked about the odds. The blonde girl told him that their chances were estimated at 20 to 1, meaning no one believed they could win. He tried to praise the odds, but she angrily pointed out that everyone viewed them as inevitable losers, but that could work in their favor, since a surprising victory would bring them huge wealth. Her excitement grew until she admitted she had bet everything, putting the guild's headquarters up as collateral for a new loan. If they won, their fate would change, and they'd regain their former glory. If they lost, there would be nothing left to lose. As she spoke, a man called out to her from the crowd, and it turned out to be Gio himself, the leader of the Shadowblade. He approached them with mockery, deriding their dilapidated guild, and revealing that he had arranged for the first match between their two teams to wipe out what little reputation they had left. He sarcastically promised that if by some miracle they won, their guild would become the greatest in the country, but that was impossible as long as a rankless fighter was in their midst. He laughed at his deception and left, leaving the team to prepare to enter the arena. When they stepped inside, Errol noticed that Gio would not participate in the fight, which he thought might slightly raise their chances of survival. Ray pointed out that all their opponents were top-tier fighters, making the outcome almost predetermined, especially since their current formation was unusually offensive. As the anticipated time approached, the announcer's voice thundered through the arena, declaring the start of the match between the Dragon's Fangs Guild and the Shadowblade Guild. Coming from the opposing side was a green-haired boy from the light sword fighters rank, boasting that he would single-handedly take down the entire team. The crowd's astonishment grew when the announcer revealed that the representative of the Dragon's Fangs was Errol, the rankless fighter. The green-haired fighter smiled scornfully, insisting that taking down a rankless opponent wouldn't take him long, but he saw it as an opportunity to show off in front of the audience, rushing in speedily and thrusting his sword into Errol's chest. Gasps of shock erupted in the arena, while the blonde girl panicked, but Ray urged her to look closely, revealing that the one who had been stabbed was merely a deceptive shadow. The fighter spun around, stunned, only to be met by another image, and soon several moving images of Errol swirled around him. Deciding to finish quickly, he attacked all of them with rapid strikes, but was shocked to find that his sword only cut through air, and the next moment he felt the real stab penetrating his body from behind. Errol had created 3 images simultaneously, a skill considered one of the most difficult to master. The opponent collapsed to the ground, and the round ended, while Errol told them that his mother had trained with him using 5 images at once, and that she had been going easy on him. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers for the rankless fighter, amazed by what they had just witnessed. Meanwhile, Errol kept thinking that executing the same technique his opponent had used wasn't quite perfected yet, and he needed to refine it further. He entered the next round against a dual-wielding fighter who launched a barrage of strikes at him, but Errol blocked them all, then finished the fight with his double strike, knocking his opponent down. With the second fighter falling, he faced a third fighter wielding 2 dagger-like blades, who mixed rapid fighting moves with body techniques. But Errol's speed outmatched all of that, reality blurred with illusion, until he surprised him with a strike from behind, taking him down to the ground. Ray and the blonde-haired girl watched in astonishment as they witnessed with their own eyes how 3 elite fighters were defeated without breaking a sweat, filling the blonde with hope for a possible victory. However, the 4th round proved to be much tougher. Errol faced an opponent skilled in sword and shield fighting, making it difficult to penetrate his defense. He couldn't land decisive blows and had to dodge, gradually weakening the opponent's shield. The opponent shouted angrily that it was impossible for Errol to be rankless, to which Errol responded that what he achieved was merely the fruit of hard work and daily effort. The fighter scoffed at the talk of effort, insisting that only talent rules the fight, then charged at him skillfully like a shield thrust. However, Errol used the insight technique he inherited from his mother, reading the opponent's movement and dropping his shield with a sudden kick, then borrowed a combat maneuver from his previous opponent to kick him in the stomach. He picked up the shield and charged forward while his opponent attempted to rise to attack again, but Errol blocked the blow and retaliated, knocking him down defeated. The crowd erupted into arguments, accusing him of hiding his true rank, prompting the organizers to summon the magical revealing orb and declare before everyone that he truly was rankless. The cheers grew louder as Errol stood firm while the next opponent was announced. The Eastern duelist Masamune, descended from samurai lineage and wielding a curved sword known as a katana. As soon as his feet hit the the arena, Errol sensed the danger in Masamune's presence and realized this duel would not be like the previous ones. He prepared himself, knowing his opponent was ready to unleash his maximum skill, watching for the perfect moment to strike like a coiled snake. Errol stepped confidently toward his opponent, driven by curiosity despite the danger. As soon as he entered Masamune's sword range, the latter lunged at him in a flash. However, Errol was faster. He vanished from before Masamune and appeared behind him in a fleeting moment. The Eastern duelist's eyes widened in surprise, and Errol told him he was indeed the fastest in the city, but his mother was much faster, so he had grown accustomed to matching the speed of his kind. In a decisive move, Errol used the ultimate skill of the Princess of Swords school, showering his opponent with precise, successive thrusts that ended the fight in an instant. Silence fell over the arena, and astonishment covered the faces. The weakest fighter in the weakest guild had defeated the strongest members of the strongest guild in the country, all by himself. Errol left the battlefield heading toward Ray and the blonde girl, reassured that they had earned enough to save the guild from its debts. In the evening, they returned to their headquarters, and a celebratory atmosphere filled the place. Laughter and drinks abounded, and Errol remained surprised that the blonde girl could drink, to which she assured him she was a mature adult despite her small appearance. She still couldn't believe he had defeated 5 elite fighters from the most famous guild in the kingdom, all on his own. Her mind filled with plans to exploit this glory, and she began to think of ways to get closer to him to restore her guild's status. She tried to charm him with pleasant talk and subtle seduction, but Errol firmly rejected, stating he preferred Ray, which made her face flush with anger, thinking he was just mocking her to get rid of the blonde. Yet, he was sincere in his feelings. Ray heatedly said that in the past, he had called her boy during their duel, and that everyone had always said she lacked femininity. Errol told her there was enough strength and beauty in her personality, and that she was mistaken in her assumptions. Meanwhile, the blonde smirked slyly, understanding that Ray did not yet realize her strengths. She dropped the argument and decided to take care of Errol, assuring him he needed rest after his long battles. However, Errol preferred to rest in the training arena, asking Ray to help him master the magic shield enhancement technique she could easily perform due to her rank. She began striking him hard in a tough training session, while the blonde watched from the balcony, marveling at his strange understanding of the concept of rest. The noise disturbed the girl's father, who stumbled out, drunk from the effects of the drink, complaining about the noise, believing they were venting their frustrations after losing the tournament. His daughter quickly informed him that they had actually defeated the strongest guild in the city. At first, he didn't believe her, and thought the opponent had sent lower-ranked trainees, but she explained that they were all elite fighters and that Errol had defeated them alone. The man woke from his drunken stupor, staring at the exhausted boy covered in bruises, questioning the extent of his real strength. His daughter proudly told him she had bet on their victory and won a huge wager thanks to him, and they were now free from debt with enough to continue the guild's work. But the father remained reserved, pointing out that if the boy was truly that strong, major guilds would rush to recruit him with large sums of money, so she shouldn't get her hopes up. The girl confidently replied that she would solve the issue by marrying him, so he would always stay with them. At that point, Errol clearly stated he wouldn't do anything of the sort, then turned to her father, continuing his statement steadily, mocking her stubbornness and lack of understanding. Errol gave his final word, saying she, the girl, was at least not a loser who surrendered to everything, which was a clear jab at her father. The man shot him a sharp, angry glare, but Errol didn't notice, and boldly critiqued him further, demanding he stop complaining and live up to his age as long as he still had a hand to fight with. This provoked the father, who lunged at him, grabbing him by the collar, warning him not to speak of what he did not understand, and declaring that the double-ranked fighter who lost a hand was nothing but an empty shell with no use. But Errol responded firmly that what he said was untrue. Even as a rankless fighter, he was still striving and fighting to rise in this world. The man pushed him away and silently returned upstairs. Ray and Lolly approached him immediately to check on his condition, and the girl apologized for her father's behavior, thanking him for his bravery in defending himself. Errol said that her father, regardless of what he lost in arm and fighting life, still held great strength and invaluable experience, and refusing to utilize it was a real loss. He thought to himself that he might learn amazing skills from him if he could motivate him to return to sword fighting, so he resolved to awaken the dueling spirit in him again. Lolly heard him resolve to acquire new skills, and suggested he start by going on adventures in the dungeons near the city. He appeared puzzled, so Ray explained that the dungeons were deep caves, where monsters born by the dozens and filled with traps were located. They were ideal places to gain experience and hone true skills in preparation for major competitions, especially the Sword Gods Cup, which was the annual tournament featuring the best duelists in the country to prove they were the strongest. Errol had never heard of it before, so Lolly pulled out a form and invited him to fill it out if he wanted to participate. However, to their surprise, Errol tore the paper up in front of them, leaving Ray in shock and asking if he didn't want to enter the competition. He replied that he uncovered Lolly's trick, as she was trying to slip a marriage contract instead of the form. She laughed, admitting she was testing his reaction, but Errol didn't let her off easily, grabbing her to discipline her for her heavy joke. The next morning, he woke to find her trying to tease him again, so he moved away and tied her to the bed before leaving. Later, they all gathered and headed to one of the dungeons. Lolly explained that entry was done through magic transport circles that sent fighters to the level they had previously reached, and she had reached the 12th level, while Ray had reached the 14th. Errol expressed his desire to accompany Ray to her level, but Lolly clarified that the rules only allowed those who had actually stepped onto the level before. He felt disappointed as he had hoped to face the stronger monsters from the start, but Lolly reassured him she knew a shortcut that would lead quickly to lower levels. He agreed to the plan, but the girl tried to isolate him, claiming hoping Ray could continue her adventure alone, but Errol was not deceived and insisted on Ray accompanying them. The three entered the first level, and as soon as they took a few steps, they were ambushed by two armored knights attacking from both sides. Errol drew his sword to face one while Ray confronted the other. He noticed in astonishment that, despite their heavy armor, the knights moved with unexpected agility, but it was not speed beyond his ability to fight back. Errol lunged with a swift step and severed the knight's head with a sharp strike, but he quickly realized that the armor before him was completely hollow, animated by the mana energy emanating from the heart of the dungeon. Before long, the headless body rose again, prompting Ray to declare that these knights had no known weak points and felt no pain at all. Errol then changed his strategy, targeting the legs with quick strikes that brought the knight to the ground, while Ray finished her battle at the same moment, warning that the enchanted armors would regain their strength soon and urging them to keep advancing. Before they moved, Errol asked Loli about her rank, and she proudly replied that she was a light sword duelist, offering to teach him anything he wanted in the training area or outside of it. He dismissed her once again and continued walking. Just before entering the second level, they heard a cry for help rising from behind one of the doors. They cautiously approached to find a bloodied man kneeling and pleading for their assistance. Ray suggested carrying him to the surface, but he vehemently refused, saying that his comrades were still inside, wounded by a trap that had exploded, and he begged them to rush in to save them. Loli hurried to discuss payment before helping, and the man offered her a large sum of money, which astonished her. However, Errol, walking behind him, noticed that someone losing all that blood couldn't even stand without pure water, so how could he walk so easily? He realized that the blood and wounds were fake, but he chose to stay silent out of curiosity and a desire to know what was really going on. The man led them to a hidden room scattered with traces of blood, in the center of which lay a small pool containing a single gold coin. As soon as Loli saw the gold, she bent down to pick it up, and suddenly, a magical circle ignited beneath their feet. Ray realized it was a trap, while the man smiled proudly, saying he had been well paid for this easy job, but was surprised that he was transported with them in the same circle. They landed in a level that Ray had never seen before, even lower than the 14th floor, and there were no monsters visible yet. The deceptive man trembled, saying they had reached the deepest point of the dungeon, where it was said that the sword god resided. Moments later, a massive knight appeared before them, donned in sparkling armor of rainbow colors. Loli dismissed the whole story as an unbelievable legend, while Errol felt the weight of danger and threw her down just as the unknown knight unleashed a wind strike that demolished the room's walls. The sword knight attacked Errol directly, who barely raised his sword in time to block the blow. Despite crashing against the wall, he realized he had survived thanks to his long training, enhancing the magical armor under Ray's guidance. He retaliated, but his opponent was extremely swift, moving gracefully with advanced techniques to retreat and strike. Errol smiled, declaring it was a perfect opportunity to test his strength, shocking his companions. He launched forward with the same divine speed his enemy had used, closing the gap and showering the knight with a flurry of strikes that the knight skillfully parried. The enemy was forced to retreat and then unleashed a skill that intensified the gravity within the hall, knocking everyone to the ground. However, Errol remained firmly in place, as he had trained under similar conditions with his mother when he was a young boy. Back then, he hadn't been able to endure, but now the situation was different. He pulled out the gold piece Loli had picked up and used it to dispel the skill's effect, creating a small gap in his opponent's defense, which he immediately exploited to unleash one of his strongest techniques called Endless Smash, exploding the knight's armor into scattered shards. Everyone froze in shock at the sight. Then Errol used pure water to regain his energy, and they all reactivated the teleportation spell to exit the dungeon safely. Meanwhile, Rod, Loli's father, was sitting in a tavern, deep in drink, when he heard three young men boasting about how they had tricked the new members of the Dragon Fangs Guild and sent them into a trap from which they would not escape. Angrily, he approached them and smashed their table with his fist, demanding to know the truth. One of them, named Jorg, mockingly intervened, labeling him an old drunk. Rod then realized that Jorg was the one who had orchestrated the scheme, so he viciously attacked him out of desperation over his daughter, whom he thought was dead, but his opponent knocked him to the ground, leaving him heartbroken. As he lay there, the tavern door swung open, and Loli entered, chatting with Ray and Errol about being hungry after their adventure. Rod saw his daughter and rushed to embrace her, thanking God for her safety. Meanwhile, Ray confronted Jorg and announced that they had extracted a confession from one of his associates who had exposed his scheme, but he denied it as usual, claiming that anyone entering the dungeons was responsible for themselves. Errol admitted to himself that there was some truth to his words, but Rod interrupted, threatening his opponent that he wouldn't get away with his actions, while Jorg merely scoffed and called him an old drunk, leaving the place and leaving Errol wondering what new tricks awaited them. Lilia was sitting with Ray, reviewing the competition papers they would participate in, and discovered that Ariel was in the same group, which caused her a great deal of discomfort. Then Ariel approached them and asked if there was a competition or not. However, Ray informed Ariel that there were many competitors in this competition, although it was preliminary, which led Lilia to feel greatly frustrated due to the presence of strong fighters. But Ariel reassured her to feel at ease, saying that her level was indeed good. However, Lilia felt he was saying that just to comfort her, knowing that her skills skills weren't the best. Later, Ray observed Ariel as she got to know the fighters in her group, but she discovered that her group had many strong fighters. Still, she promised herself that she would win the competition this year. Ariel told her that her father would provide her with many things, which made her feel happy, but she wanted to rely more on herself. Lilia also had strong fighters in her group, but she didn't give up. This is why they were heading to the dungeon again today, and she asked Ariel if they had to go. Lilia suggested that they should have someone present to rescue them if something bad happened. At that moment, Ray thought that Ariel never thought of taking matters into his own hands. Then Lilia's father came when he realized they would be training in the dungeon and warned them to be cautious, as it was possible that George had set another trap for Lilia. He asked her that if she felt danger, she should escape immediately. Lilia assured her father that she would do that, then she left. However, later, Lilia's father felt an increasing fear for Lilia, but he realized he needed to play the role of a father and stop drinking, so he could be a strong fighter too. We moved to the competition arena, where many combat matches occurred, including Lilia's fight. Unfortunately, Lilia faced defeat, which made her feel sad and alone. Then Ariel came to her, trying to cheer her up so she wouldn't feel upset, and told her he wished to meet her in the combat qualifiers, which made Lilia feel that he was being kind to her. However, Lilia asked Ariel to be cautious in his next fight and wished him victory. She shared several details about his upcoming opponent and pointed out their strengths to warn him of their power, but Ariel didn't feel scared at all. He told her he had faced stronger fighters in the dungeon as well. Lilia informed Ariel that this was a powerful fighter who used magic in her combat and enchanted her sword, leading to strong strikes. Ariel was surprised that a fighter using magic had entered the competition, but Lilia explained that the guild allowed them if they were registered. Then the fighters were called to the arena, and Lilia wished Ariel good luck. Ariel then stepped forward to face his opponent. The opponent told Ariel that she didn't want to hear that he lost due to magic, claiming it was unfair since she used magic. However, Ariel also had another reason, saying that the Kozu fighter would win. The battle commenced, and his opponent started shooting fireballs at Ariel, but he skillfully dodged the fireballs until he could attack her. However, the girl blocked Ariel's strike and nearly hit him but failed. At that moment, Ariel observed that his opponent possessed strong and impressive skills, as she used magic and swordplay simultaneously. However, the girl couldn't evaluate Ariel because she thought he wasn't strong enough to assess her. She informed him that she would use her strongest strikes and began to use magic on her sword, transforming it into a fiery sword and delivering a powerful blow to Ariel. Ariel began to defend against the strikes, telling himself that these blows were strong and that he couldn't predict where the attack would come from. Nevertheless, he possessed strong skills, enabling him to block the blows with ease. He noted that his opponent wasn't strong enough and was comparable to Lilia's skills. At this point, Lilia believed this was an insult to her, which made the girl angry. However, Ariel demonstrated his strength, managing to dispel her magic and transform her fiery sword into a regular sword. He then launched an attack on her, successfully striking her and causing his opponent to lose consciousness. Ariel thought there were many things he could learn in the Sword City, and that if he did some training, he could also learn magic. A few days later, we shift to Lilia's home, where she was trying to wake her father to go with her to watch the last fight between Ariel and his new opponent. However, her father didn't want to go and refused. Lilia tried again to convince him, but he still wouldn't agree. At this point, Lilia thought her father was afraid of going because he might meet George. However, Lilia's father told her to be quiet and that he wasn't afraid of George. He admitted to her that he had held his sword yesterday and that he wasn't like he used to be, finding it difficult even to win the sword cup. But Lilia explained that he should be considerate of those who couldn't even enter the main tournament and urged him to get ready immediately so they could go watch Ariel, insisting very much on this. She held on to him and dragged him there. While they were on the way, Lilia asked her father if he would have gone secretly to watch the fight if she hadn't come with him. This surprised her father, who asked why. She then remembered her father's training with Ray and how he loved to see his team members always progressing, and how now he would be witnessing one of them in his final fight also progressing. Next, we shift to the arena, where Ray was feeling incredibly anxious until Ariel approached her and asked why she was so troubled. However, Ray told him not to stand there like that. Ariel then sat down in front of her. Ray told Ariel that this competition was the toughest competition in the world, so it was natural to feel nervous. But it was difficult for her to face someone she didn't know anything about, making it hard to devise a plan before the fight. Ariel thought she was afraid of facing him in the final showdown. Here, Ray attempted to direct a strike at him, but Ariel caught her hand at that moment. They announced the previous fight, revealing that Ariel's opponent was George, which led Ray to feel anxious for Ariel. When Ariel began to move, Ray held his hand and warned him to be cautious, because George was a very strong fighter. Ariel then moved to the fighting arena to face George. Lilia was present to cheer for him and called out to him, asking him to take care of George. When George appeared, he looked very frightening, causing Lilia to worry about him. When Lilia's father saw George and noticed he looked monstrous, he instructed Ariel to stay away immediately, since he possessed the strongest sword in the world. Lilia then asked about the strongest sword in the world. Her father explained that this sword contained a sealed demon, At that moment, George was surprised that someone recognized his sword, and he asked Lilia's father if he was from the imperial court. Lilia was astonished that George didn't recognize her father, but Lilia's father believed that George had been possessed by the sealed demon. The legend said that the blade the sword's owner used to kill the demon was cursed out of revenge and needed to be kept away under strict surveillance in the royal storeroom. Lilia's father wondered how it had gotten here, but George was the one who broke the seal that hindered him, waiting several hundred years until everyone who remembered was dead and became part of forgotten history. He knew that someone would eventually seek his power but had no choice but to wait until someone came to release him. He introduced himself as Duvair and said he now wanted to enjoy destroying the place and spreading chaos. Then Ray approached Ariel and told him that it was Duvair. Ariel was surprised and asked Ray if she knew him, but Ray informed him that he had a very old history because he was a demon summoned by the great evil in ancient times, and it seemed as if he were not a legend. Then, conversations about Duvair multiplied among the spectators because he had killed many people before, which made them feel afraid, and they began to run away, leaving the arena. But this fear of the people is what Duvair loves, and he also prefers to hear their screams. Then Duvair used his power and displayed a demonic strength that caused the place to be completely sealed so that no one could escape from the castle, leading people to feel extremely anxious. But George was completely delighted by all this because he saw that this was what humanity deserved, which was death. However, he looked in front of him and found Ariel fully prepared for him. Duvair thought that Ariel wanted to die because he was insisting on challenging him, but Ariel told Duvair that he had been killed by the sword of the great legend, and that he was confident he could also kill him. He also told him that he was unbeatable, but Duvair mocked Ariel's words and admitted that he had been killed before by the great sword, but it no longer existed among the living. Now, there was no one capable of defeating him, but Ariel had something he wanted to happen with Duvair. First, that the great sword still existed, and second, that Ariel could defeat Duvair. But Duvair saw this as mere nonsense. Suddenly, Ariel attacked Duvair with great force, using his speed to deliver several blows, which surprised Duvair with Ariel's strength. But Duvair did not stand idle and told Ariel not to forget that he was the body of the Sword Emperor, and attacked Ariel, delivering a strong blow, believing he had defeated him. However, Ariel was completely unharmed, which astonished Duvair at Ariel's strength. Duvair asked how this happened, but Ariel had gained courage and strength from his training with Ray, which greatly angered Duvair. He launched an attack on Ariel, but he couldn't hit him. Then Ariel gathered his strength and attacked Duvair, delivering several quick blows, resulting in injuries to Duvair. Duvair thought that Ariel was the great sword, but Ariel told Duvair that he was just a classless warrior and delivered a final blow that knocked Duvair away, preventing him from moving. Then, Ariel approached Duvair and thought that he could no longer move or fight, but Duvair told himself that he needed to enter the body of someone else to escape from Ariel, and began searching for someone with a strong structure. He then chose Lilia's father. While Lilia was checking on Ariel and Ray, he dropped George's sword and attacked Lilia, but her father defended her, causing the demon spirit to take over Lilia's father, and he became the demon who was Lilia's father, threatening Ariel that if he did not let him go, he would kill Lilia. Here, Ariel realized that he should have broken the sword and not killed George, but the demon told him that he would not be able to do that because he would kill his fiancée, which surprised Ariel at the word fiancé. Then Ariel told the demon that Lilia was not his fiancée, but the demon claimed that he had taken over Lilia's father's memory, which led him to believe that Lilia was Ariel's fiancée. This caused Lilia to feel embarrassed about this and asked the demon not to disclose it, but here Ariel vowed to the demon and Lilia that he would kill both of them. At this moment, Ray tried to stop him from doing so. Then the demon asked Ariel if he really did not care about Lilia. At that moment, Ariel told the demon that he did not care about Lilia and that people should be killed if they had no value. But Lilia saw that this was the worst thing he had said to her. Then the demon asked Lilia to clarify if she was his fiancée or not. Here, Lilia cried and told him that this thought had only been in her mind and was just wishful thinking, and that he was not her husband at all. This greatly angered the demon, who then asked why he should keep trash like her. Then Ariel thought that Lilia had brought this upon herself, but Ray thought that the demon could not kill Lilia. However, the demon said that he could do so, and he would tear the girl into pieces. But suddenly, his body froze completely, and Lilia's father appeared and managed to stop his body, not allowing the demon to use his body completely. He managed to break the shackles on his daughter. Here Ray asked what was happening now, but Ariel thought that what was happening was the opposite of what happened with George, and that he did not change at all when he was possessed, while Lilia's father was resisting from within. Lilia believed that her father was much stronger than George. Then the demon told Lilia's father to let him use his body, saying he wanted the power to restore his glory. But Lilia's father did not agree with this, and told him that if he had come to him a short time ago, he might have agreed. But after meeting Ariel, he was sure he could restore his glory without anyone's help. He asked the demon to exit his body and threw the sword away. Then the sword headed towards Ariel, who prepared for it well, and directed a blow that caused the sword to break completely, and defeated the demon. The black mana was removed, the exits were door opened, and Ariel confirmed that it should disappear forever. We moved to the training ground, where Lilia's father, who is called Rod, was training with some soldiers. This led to harsh training methods, and the soldiers falling to the ground. Then Rod told the soldiers that they must have more energy than what they currently possess. Then he asked them, "Who's next?" But all the soldiers fled in fear of him. Lilia was watching Rod and was very happy because he had become better than before and gained more enthusiasm. However, there was one soldier hiding so that Rod wouldn't see him. But Lilia approached this soldier and told him that he came here to train, not to hide. But the soldier told Lilia that Rod's training had become harsh and he was feeling scared now, which made Lilia happy to hear this. The soldier asked Lilia about Ariel, and Lilia answered the soldier that Ariel had left the guild and gone away, which upset the soldier when he heard this. Lilia also cried because she wanted to marry Ariel, and cried because he left her alone. Also, Rainer went to search for Ariel. Then we moved to Ariel, who is on his way to his homeland. The cart driver told Ariel that the champion of the Great Sword competition doesn't usually disappear directly after winning this way, and asked Ariel if he should be there. But Ariel answered the driver that there was nothing left he wanted to see or do. But the driver thought he came to this rural country because he wanted to visit his birthplace. But Ariel told him that he came to this place to test his strength again, and maybe he could defeat his mother now. Then we moved to Ariel's mother's house, and she was picking roses. The scent of the roses was beautiful, and she said she would gather a bouquet of roses for you, Ariel, knowing that Ariel was behind her. Ariel said to his mother that he was sneaking so she wouldn't know of his arrival, but his mother noticed that Ariel had gained some skill compared to before, because she didn't sense his presence until just a few moments ago. Then Ariel confessed to his mother that he won the Great Sword competition, which made his mother happy about this. She told Ariel that he had become a winner like her now. Ariel was about to complete his speech, but his mother moved quickly in front of him and presented him with the rose, telling him that its scent is smart, isn't it? This amazed Ariel at his mother's speed. But Ariel knew that his mother had discovered him because he wanted to train with her now. But his mother told Ariel that they were in the wrong place, so the house wouldn't be destroyed, and asked him to go behind the mountain to the training place. Then we moved to the training place. Ariel's mother was very excited to see her son's new strength, but Ariel thought it was better for her to laugh this way as long as she could. Then Ariel's mother, Farah, suddenly disappeared and launched a quick attack on Ariel, but Ariel defended against her, though he was amazed by this. But Ariel flew high and directed several strikes at Farah, thinking this attack would enable him to win against her. But Farah defended against Ariel's strikes with complete ease. But Ariel asked Farah what kind of skill she used to defend against his strikes. But Farah told Ariel that she just waved her sword, which surprised Ariel, and that it wasn't a skill. But Farah doesn't use any skills in combat, and this is what she learned from Ariel. Ariel discovered then that Farah had strength that shouldn't be underestimated. Then Ariel attacked Farah, which caused a big commotion in the city, and people thought monsters were attacking the city, but it was Ariel and Farah's training. Then Ariel used the great flight skill to attack Farah, but Farah directed fire strikes at him. But Ariel also showed her fire strikes, but Farah said she would show her best, which led to her sword catching fire and attacking Ariel. But Ariel didn't stay silent about this and did the same, and they directed strikes at each other. Then we moved to Rainer when she arrived at Ariel's house and was looking for him. She knocked on the house door, but Mira, Ariel's little sister, was the one who opened the door for her and asked Rainer, "Who are you?" Then Rainer introduced herself and said she wanted to meet Ariel, but Mira was surprised and said to her, "You want my brother, you fat cow?" which shocked Rainer at being compared to a fat cow. But Mira told Rainer that Ariel wasn't there and that he doesn't deal with cows, and was about to close the door, but Rainer grabbed the door and asked her to wait. But Mira told her she doesn't know cow language. Then Farah and Ariel came, and Farah told Mira that she shouldn't treat guests this way. Then Ariel asked Rainer what she was doing there, but Mira hugged Ariel because she hadn't seen him for a while, and Ariel saw that Mira had grown bigger than before. But Mira asked Ariel why they looked tired, and Ariel told Mira they were having a battle. But Farah told Mira that Ariel had become strong, and that he won this battle. But Ariel saw that their skills were equal, but Ariel won in physical strength only. But Rainer thought this was amazing, because Farah was the one who won the great sword too. But Ariel knows that Farah isn't in her best condition, as she was in the guild days, and he's not proud of winning against her. But Farah told Ariel that she's not that old, but Mira sees that Farah is still beautiful. Then Farah asked Ariel to introduce her to Rainer. Then they moved inside the house, and tea and sweets were served to Rainer. But Farah didn't want to know what Ariel did in the City of Swords, and she wanted to know how he met Rainer because she loves romantic stories. But Mira asked Farah not to waste her time listening to this cow. But Rainer asked Mira why she always calls her a cow, and if she's really that fat. Then Ariel introduced Rainer to Farah, and that they lived together in the city, which surprised Farah greatly. But Rainer tried to reverse their thinking, and told them they lived as guild members only. Ariel asked Rainer why she came here, but Rainer asked Ariel how he could leave the guild like that, but Ariel told her he left his resignation. But Raynor told him he should have said goodbye to them before leaving. But Ariel learned all the sword skills he needed and that were useful to him, and this made him think to move forward. But Farah saw that it was good to have someone who cares about Ariel and came to check on him. But Raynor told Farah that she didn't come for this reason either, and that she's from the same city. But she came to be Farah's student too. Then they heard a voice calling Farah for an emergency, and Raynor was familiar with this voice. Then Evans entered. Evans asked Farah to go with security to investigate the destruction behind the mountain, where they found many cut trees. But Farah told Evans there was no need for all this, and that she killed one of the monsters there, which amazed Evans. Ariel said to himself that Farah handled the matter easily, but Evans felt reassured at this moment and told them he would tell the soldiers to return now. Then Evans was amazed by Raynor's presence, and Raynor called Evans Papa, and Farah discovered that Evans is Raynor's father, and that she looks very much like her father. Then Evans asked Raynor what she was doing in this house. But Farah told Evans that Raynor wanted Farah to teach her how to be a good wife, which surprised Evans and made him cry. But Raynor denied this, and that she asked Farah to be her student. But Farah told her, "You want to be my student in romance, don't you?" But Raynor denied this too, and that she wanted to be a student in combat because she wanted to become a strong duelist. But Farah told her she could teach her how to be a good duelist and a good wife too, and Evans agreed to this, which amazed Raynor. But Evans was worried about Raynor's future when his wife died, and he taught her dueling, and he would be very happy if she learned housekeeping. But Farah volunteered to make Raynor a real housewife, and Evans was grateful to her for this. But Raynor asked to have a say in this, but Evans told them he would return to his work, and told Raynor she could do this. Then we moved to Ariel's father's room, who is called Leon, and Ariel entered Leon's room. Leon was busy with his magic research. Then Leon told Ariel he was working on a new magic technique. Then he told him he knew of Ariel's presence because of the big commotion in the place. Leon asked Ariel if Mira was making noise. "Did you bring one of the girls with you?" Ariel answered Leon that he was with his beautiful girlfriend, but Leon didn't expect that Ariel could do this. But Ariel told Leon that he also defeated Farah in battle, which made Leon congratulate Ariel and told him he was able to reap his fruits now. But Ariel told Leon that he had one thing left, which was to learn magic. But Leon wouldn't agree to this and told him he wouldn't teach him. Then we moved to Farah, teaching Raynor to cut vegetables. But Raynor didn't know how to do this, and had no idea. But Mira thought that Raynor had never done such things before. But Raynor started, which led to completely smashing the table, and also breaking Mira's cup, which made Mira very sad. However, Raynor apologized to her. But Farah asked Raynor if she cooked at the guild, but Raynor used to leave cooking to someone else. However, Farah promised Raynor that she would teach her everything about housekeeping. But Raynor asked Farah to teach her only swordsmanship. But Farah told her that she must learn mind, body, and skill, and that she could only do this if she managed her daily affairs and was diligent in simple matters, and that she was also happy to have another daughter at home. Then Raynor asked Farah if she had a daughter older than Ariel, but Farah told her that she did, and Mira told Raynor that her older sister had told them she would make the world easier to live in for those without class like Ariel. Then she left. But Raynor saw that there were many problems related to discrimination against those who don't have a class. Then we moved to Leon and Ariel. Ariel succeeded in fixing the table that Raynor had destroyed, and Leon was proud of Ariel. But Ariel asked Leon if he could fix the table with magic, but Leon told Ariel that he could do this. But Farah didn't want him to do it because she loved him when his scent was like wood shavings. Then Leon asked Ariel if he wanted to see how to use magic to fix things, and when Ariel agreed, Leon fixed Mira's cup using magic, which amazed Ariel. Leon said to Ariel, "Let's talk about this while we clean the place." While they were putting things back in their places, Leon asked Ariel to abandon the idea of magic, because not everyone has the required mana to use magic, and it's a special ability like having a magic battery, and it's very difficult for someone without mana or skill to cast spells. But Ariel didn't see this as impossible either, and Leon told him, of course it's not impossible, and that he knew Ariel had set a new precedent by winning the great sword competition despite being useless, and that these old swords were proof that he was a diligent person. But there are things in life that cannot be achieved even with effort. But Leon didn't throw away these swords because he didn't feel comfortable if he threw them away. But for him, trying to use magic without mana was like a swordsman without arms who couldn't hold a sword and learn through observation while blindfolded, and no effort would help with that. But Leon doesn't have magic, because if he had magic, he would have gotten the wizard class through blessing and started using spells from way back. But Ariel was sure he had mana, but Leon asked him what makes you sure of this. But Ariel told Leon that this happened daily when he was getting beaten daily by Raynor at the guild. But Leon thought Raynor was the jealous type, and that now he worried about Ariel. But Ariel told Leon that he used to let Raynor hit him so he could practice his endurance skill. But Leon asked if this was comfortable. Then Ariel said to restore his protection after being injured, he needed to drink holy water. But he remembered when he used to drink a lot of holy water, but he was spending the entire budget on holy water, which made Lilia angry, and she provided him with another medicine so he wouldn't exhaust their entire budget on holy water and asked him to use it for healing. But Rainer was worried about this and asked Lilia about this medicine. But Lilia told her she didn't know what type it was, but she found it in the storage and hoped it was holy water that would save them a lot. But Rainer wondered, what if it was poison? But Ariel didn't mind because poison would help him strengthen his internal organs, and he drank it, which surprised Lilia because Ariel actually drank it. Then he returned to the present with his father, and Leon said to Ariel that he shouldn't have drunk it. But Ariel told Leon that it wasn't actually poison, which relieved Leon. But Ariel felt something strange after drinking it, as if he had recovered something when he drank it. But it wasn't great protection, and he wondered what it was then. But Leon thought what he recovered was mana, and that now he could teach him magic. But Ariel saw that Leon was happy about this. But Leon felt jealous of Farah because she taught Ariel swordsmanship and asked him if he still felt the sensation of mana from inside him. And can you move it inside your body? But Ariel told him somewhat. But Leon asked Ariel to try releasing it. But Ariel told him he would try. And when Ariel started concentrating more, he was able to extract mana from his body, which amazed Leon greatly, and told him he was now ready to learn because this was proof of mana existing in your body. But suddenly Ariel lost consciousness, and Leon discovered that Ariel had used all the mana in his body. But Ariel told him it was very little. But Leon told him because you're in the beginning stage now, and he would need a large amount now to start using magic. But Ariel asked Leon how he could increase mana, and Leon told him like you train in swordsmanship, and it's like body training to build muscles, and you have to use mana over and over until you improve. And Ariel was happy to hear this, but he lost consciousness again. But Leon never wanted to make Ariel give up, and he was always sticking to his goals, and there was nothing impossible in his dictionary, and for him, he was the best son he could ask for. After that, Ariel moved to the mana shop to buy a large amount of mana to use, which surprised the saleswoman. Then he moved to the training place and started drinking mana and training, but he also lost consciousness. The second time, Leon was helping him, and after 6 months passed, Leon encouraged Ariel a lot because of his apparent improvement in the previous period, and told him that now he had the same amount of mana as a wizard after receiving blessing. But Ariel asked Leon if he could now use magic, but Leon told him about one last difficult problem, and showed him a paper and asked him to take a look at it. But Ariel asked, what exactly are these marks? And they are marks known as magical text, and this is what Leon told him. And he also told him when using the text, he must recognize the written spells, and with the required skill, he can automatically display the spells he needs to use magic in his mind. But Ariel doesn't have skills, but Leon told him in this case, he would have to form the spell in his mind and recite it more than once. Ariel saw this was indeed a problem, but Leon told him he could get some help from the academy in the Magic City. Ariel asked Leon, isn't this the academy he attended? Leon told him that there, all the basics of magic are taught, but he would have to train enough to reach the acceptance level first, which excited Ariel. Then they moved to the dining table. Mira ate the food and said it was very beautiful, but when she learned that Rainer had prepared the food, she scolded the food and changed her opinion. But Ariel liked the food very much, and Farah saw that Rainer had improved a lot in housekeeping and in swordsmanship too. But Mira thought Farah was exaggerating, but Ariel saw that Farah was very impressed with Rainer, and Leon also loved Rainer because she was brave and beautiful, which made Farah feel jealous of her husband's talk. But Leon told Farah she wasn't as beautiful as you, of course, which made Farah happy. But Rainer saw that Ariel's family was understanding and simple, and wished their family could be like this if her mother were alive. Then Leon created a heart with his magic for Farah, and the heart turned into a group of birds, which made Farah happy. Ariel thought that through magic, he would be much stronger. After 3 years of intensive home training, Rainer Bartback served a cup of tea to Ariel's mother, who raised it to her mouth and praised her cooking skills. Rainer breathed a sigh of relief and thanked Ariel's mother for her guidance throughout those years. However, a loud crying sound broke the kitchen's silence when Mira entered with tears in her eyes, telling them that Ariel had left the house, leaving a message on his bed. Rainer picked up the letter to discover he had gone to the Magic City without any explanation. While Mira cried over her brother's departure, Rainer was overwhelmed with guilt because she had done the same thing in the past. At that moment, Ariel's mother hugged her, warning her not to leave them like her cold son did. Rainer reassured her that she wouldn't, and Ariel's mother sadly wondered why her children had gone astray like this. Then the guilty party himself entered the room, rubbing his eyes lazily. Ariel's mother sighed, reassuring herself that things would be fine as long as her children were safe. Meanwhile, Ariel was in a carriage making its way toward the Magic City. He asked the driver how much time was left, and the driver answered that they had 3 more days. The driver asked about his constant traveling between major cities, which sparked the curiosity of the passengers. The children among them asked if he was heading to the magic school like them, and he nodded in confirmation. Then a boy named Kaido wondered why he was applying at this age, and his friend Kufa thought he was retrying admission after repeated failures. She tried to calm him down so he wouldn't embarrass Ariel, but he pointed out that she herself had just mocked him. A noisy argument broke out between them, while the third girl, Colette, tried in vain to calm them down. Ariel noticed that they were all young wizards, who had recently received their magic class. Kaido announced that he used red magic, then asked curiously about Ariel's type of magic. Then Ariel remembered what he learned from his father about dividing magic into colors based on the elements a wizard uses. And because he wasn't assigned a specific color class, his father advised him to try all the elements. Based on his experience, he told them he had no specific class, and that he was proficient in all arts without distinction. Kufa laughed, thinking that was impossible, and Kaido accused him of lying, but he showed them his card, proving he had no class. Then Kaido mocked him for daring to learn magic without a classification. Ariel sighed, having heard such mockery many times. Suddenly, a creature's roar echoed through the forest, frightening the horses and stopping the carriage. The young ones were disturbed by the sound, so Ariel explained to them that it was the roar of the King of Giants. Kaido trembled, asking the driver to hurry, but the driver told him the horses had frozen in fear. Colette was certain they were doomed, but Kufa reassured her that giants were slow-moving. Kaido agreed, believing he could dodge their attacks and face them. Colette nodded in agreement, despite her fear. As the beast approached, their terror increased until it appeared with its ugly face. Colette clung to Kufa in panic. Kaido tried to raise her spirits, confirming it wasn't so huge that it would be impossible to confront. But suddenly, a massive blow from a huge club swept through the scene, sending the creature flying through the air. While the children froze in terror, the real King of Giants appeared, 10 times larger than the previous one, and their spirits completely collapsed. The two girls tried to think of a magical trick, while Kaido got off trembling, brandishing his staff, ready to fight to the end. He gathered all his remaining magical energy and launched a massive fireball that hit the king's face. The girls thought he had defeated it, but the beast roared with greater anger and prepared to attack them. Kaido screamed, admitting his energy was depleted, and the king advanced toward the carriage, but a great explosion wiped the creature from existence. The young ones wondered who cast the spell, while Ariel stepped out of the carriage, contemplating his excessive power that had unleashed the explosion. Kaido marveled at his ability, and Kufa pointed out that the explosion spell was from the highest levels of red magic. Kaido realized that such power was only possessed by an advanced great wizard. Then Ariel approached the horses, using healing magic until they rose again. The driver thanked him, and he replied that he should show his skills next time, but the driver just said it was too exhausting. Nearby, Kaido approached Ariel, apologizing for his previous rudeness, believing he was a great magic teacher, and announced he would be his student from now on. Ariel tried to tell him he was just a wizard without classification, but the children thought he was hiding his true identity from them. Noticing their amazed looks, he thought he should have used his sword instead of magic to avoid suspicion. After everyone calmed down, the carriage moved again. After 3 days, they arrived at a city floating in the air. Kaido pointed to it joyfully, saying it was the Magic City. Ariel admired its amazing architecture as he got off the carriage with the young ones. Kaido enthusiastically explained that the bridge connecting the island to the forest was also raised by magical forces. Kufa followed her friend as he submissively followed Ariel, wondering why he admired him so much, and thought he might have used hypnosis magic to control him. These suspicions annoyed Ariel, who was tired of doubts wherever he went. Upon entering the city, Kaido asked Ariel if he would apply with him to the Red Magic School, which surprised him. Kaido explained that the schools were divided by magic colors, as each element had a different magical language for its spells, and therefore the teachers and curricula varied. Kufa said she would join the blue school, while Colette admitted she was nervous about applying to the green school. Ariel realized he had to pass the admission exam, and prayed he wouldn't be rejected like what happened to him in the City of Swords. After saying goodbye to the girls, he headed with Kaido to the Red Magic School. Ariel submitted his admission application, and the employee asked if he had entered his data accurately. He thought she was referring to his classification and expected rejection because he had no class, but she approved easily, which amazed him. He inquired why the school accepted those without classification, and she answered that they gave everyone a fair chance. After approval, he went with Kaido to the examination yard. He watched a young man successfully cast a fire spell, then another applicant was called who proudly announced he was an advanced wizard, and the attendees were impressed by his talent. Ariel wondered how important this classification was, and Kaido explained that holders guaranteed themselves a bright future, but Ariel remembered his father, who ended up in the countryside despite his talent. Kaido thought the young man was arrogant, and Ariel replied that he was no less arrogant than him. The young man cast an explosion spell that burned the bronze dummy, amazing everyone. Kaido started boasting about his teacher's abilities, which annoyed the young man. Ariel stopped him, and the other thought he was afraid of him, but Ariel pointed to the dummy, asking him to look again. He discovered it was unaffected, as the examiner explained it was made of strong metal that ordinary attacks couldn't melt. Kaido went back to mocking the arrogant wizard, but Ariel silenced him and stepped forward for his test. He stood in front of the dummy, made of mithril, ready to try his power. The examiner noticed, amazed by his magical preparation. Ariel cast an explosion spell that appeared as a thin thread of fire that poured onto the dummy. The young man laughed mockingly at its weakness, but the dummy soon melted into a pool of molten metal, shocking him, because that spell usually didn't have enough heat to melt mithril. The young man accused Ariel of cheating, so he explained that he concentrated the flame into a small point to multiply its thermal intensity until the metal melted. The young man couldn't believe his ability to modify the spell, while Ariel calmly walked away. Kaido asked where he was going, and he answered that he intended to apply to the rest of the magic schools as well. He arrived at the water school where Kufa had successfully completed her test. She was surprised to see him there, and he told her he would take his exam like her. When his turn came, he launched solid ice spikes that shattered the mithril dummy into fragments, thereby crushing the hopes of all the applicants. Then he headed to the green school where he found Colette huddled in a corner, trembling. He asked her why she was hesitating, and she told him she couldn't register because of her extreme fear and needed moral support. He advised her to rely on herself. She asked him how he dealt with anxiety when it overcame him, and he answered that he had never felt nervous, and she seemed stunned. He wondered why a person felt nervous, and she answered that it arose from fear of failure. After thinking about her words, he asked her if she had never failed, and she admitted she often failed and therefore feared repeating disappointment, adding that he too had failed many times. Then Ariel wondered about the secret of her fear of failure, explaining that a person's life doesn't end just because they failed at something. Ariel's simple words amazed Colette, and she finally realized that even if she failed, she could try again. After she calmed down, she thanked him for his help. He smiled and asked her about the nature of the green school exam. She explained that applicants were required to move a windmill using magic. He immediately registered with her, and they entered the examination yard. He focused his mind and cast a powerful tornado spell toward the windmill, and it tore apart under the fierce storm. Then he realized the windmill wasn't made of mithril metal. The examiner announced his success and asked Colette to start her test. She became more nervous after his amazing display, but he reminded her to stay calm, so she pulled herself together and successfully performed her test. Ariel left the hall, heading to the rest of the magic schools, and passed all their tests with impressive ease. Finally, he arrived at the Black Magic School and was amazed by its dilapidated building. While walking through the corridors, he spotted a strange creature inside a box, and a woman approached him, asking if he had seen her pet Gooey. He pointed to the box. She rushed to it and picked up the creature with delight, proudly mentioning it was a hybrid creature she had made herself in her laboratory. Suddenly, a skeleton welcomed him to the school. Ariel instinctively rushed forward and hit its head with his sword, then wondered if it was a non-living creature, but the skeleton introduced herself as Latlia, confirming she was an ordinary human. Ariel was surprised by her walking in skeletal form and asked how to apply for the Black School test. She explained that no one wanted to learn black magic, so they didn't hold an exam at all. Despite finding their simplicity strange, he decided to join them. After that, he returned to the city where Kaido and the girls were calling him enthusiastically. The children rushed to ask him which school he would choose. Then they started arguing among themselves about who would join him. Ariel sighed and told them he intended to enroll in all the schools at the same time. Kaido thought enrolling in 3 schools at once was indeed impossible, but Ariel clarified he would join all 6 schools in the city. As he counted their colors from red and blue to white, yellow, and black, the young ones felt their minds collapsing before his amazing ambition that exceeded the limits of imagination. Arel surprised everyone when he said he didn't plan to join just one school, but intended to enroll in all 6 magic schools at the same time. His friends stared at him in disbelief, completely shocked by his decision. Arel showed them the 6 acceptance letters he'd received, and Kova couldn't believe he'd managed to pull that off. She wondered how the other schools hadn't found out that he'd been accepted elsewhere. Arel explained that student information wasn't shared between schools, then started looking over each school's schedule, confident he could attend them all simultaneously, with a bit of improvisation. But he suddenly changed his mind when he noticed that the schedules overlapped. Kaido reminded him that he'd warned him not to apply to 6 schools at once because it would be impossible to attend them all. Arel pointed out that attendance only counted for 20% of the total grade, and since most of the mark depended on exams, he was sure he'd manage just fine as long as he performed well on tests. Colette pointed out that he wouldn't pass the exams if he didn't attend classes, since the latest material taught right before tests wasn't in the books. Arel asked to borrow their notes to fix the problem, and they agreed, but Kova wondered what he'd do about the 3 other schools where he couldn't borrow notes. Arel explained that there was no need to worry about the Black Magic School since no classes were held there, because the Black Magic School relied on self-study that left him to focus on the Yellow and White Magic Schools. Kaido was impressed by his reasoning and suggested they all go to school together on their first day. Kova pulled Colette aside and asked how Arel was planning to attend 2 schools at once, since she'd heard that managing just one properly was nearly impossible. Colette admitted that Arel was a very mysterious person, not normal at all, and didn't act like ordinary people. Kaido called everyone over so they could go to their first class together. They entered the classroom, and Kaido was so excited for his first day that he couldn't wait to sit down. Arel led him toward the back, but Royce spotted them before they could take their seats. He recognized them right away, but they ignored him and kept walking. Royce shouted angrily at being ignored. That was when Kaido recognized him as the guy who'd failed the entrance exams, but Royce denied losing. He accused Arel of being a fraud because it was impossible for a skilled wizard like him to lose to an ordinary spell user doing simple tricks. Arel revealed that he wasn't a spell user, and then Royce understood why he'd lost. He assumed Arel was a wizard and praised him for reaching that level at such a young age, even as a new student. Arel denied being a wizard, which made Royce panic. The only other explanation was that Arel was a great archmage, but Arel denied that too, leaving Royce speechless and completely confused. The teacher entered the classroom and asked everyone to sit down to start the lesson. Royce immediately raised his hand, wanting to ask a question. The teacher didn't recognize him, so Royce introduced himself and asked about Arel's rank since he was the only other person who had used the explosion spell during the exam. The teacher revealed that Arel was unranked, and Arel confirmed it. Royce was so shocked, he couldn't even process what he was hearing. Kaido felt sorry for him since he himself had once been that ignorant, and reassured him that he'd get used to to it. They took their seats, and the teacher announced the beginning of the lesson, telling them to open their books while he wrote some magic spell texts on the board. Kaido struggled to keep up because there were so many magical formulas to memorize. The spells themselves were already hard, but adding spelling and vocabulary to the mix made learning a real nightmare. Meanwhile, Arel was surprised that they were starting with something so basic at the academy. He wondered why they were still studying from scratch when experienced spell users already had the magical texts engraved in their minds. The teacher explained that quite a few of them hadn't fully memorized the spells or their rules yet. He said the only reason they could use magic without proper knowledge was their natural talent, but emphasized that full understanding of magical texts was necessary for smoother spellcasting. He added that mastering this would help them choose the best techniques for casting spells and managing magical energy efficiently, reducing physical strain on their bodies. That's when Arel finally understood why the teacher put so much emphasis on it. The teacher also explained that at higher levels, they'd gain the ability to rearrange spells to create more complex forms of magic. Kaido asked if that's what Arel had done during the exams, and Arel admitted he hadn't realized that was considered an advanced technique. He explained that his father used to mix spells carelessly as if it were normal. After class, he went to the Green Magic School and met Colette. He told her that the classes at the other schools weren't offering anything new, but admitted that Green Magic School was fun, especially because of the upcoming practical training in flight magic. He confessed that he'd never tried anything like that before, which surprised Colette since it was impossible to master advanced magic without learning something basic like flying. Errol blamed his strange upbringing, saying his father was afraid of heights and had never taught him anything related to it. The instructor walked in and asked the students to split up before starting flight practice. She told them to imagine being gently lifted by a rising air current. She began floating and added that they could spread their arms and imagine being birds to help them master the technique. Arel was at a loss because the instructor's method only worked if the spell was already ingrained in the user's mind. Arel couldn't memorize the spell because he couldn't think about something he didn't know. Colette started hovering beside him, thrilled that she'd mastered the technique. Errol tried to observe her method to copy it, but she lost her balance and fell. The other students laughed at her, and although Errol almost felt he should comfort her, she brushed it off and got back up. She told them she no longer feared failure and resumed training. Arel admired how quickly Colette was improving and starting to fly, convinced she'd achieve full flight with more practice, which motivated him to train too. He thought the best way to apply the instructor's guidance was to trigger a tornado spell beneath his feet. The spell launched him upward, but when the upward force ran out, he fell hard to the ground. Colette offered him her hand, and he took it gratefully. Then another student walked over, mocking them and saying they were a pathetic sight, before showing off how well he could fly. He floated for a few seconds, and then landed again. He told them that he'd been studying flight magic since becoming a wizard, and had never lost a race before. Arel didn't know what a race was, so Colette explained that it was a sport using flight magic, where people competed along a course to see who reached the finish line first. Arel got excited about the idea, and agreed to join, but the student reminded him that it was a flight sport, and advised him to learn how to fly first. Arel boasted that he'd master flying very soon. The student asked the instructor when the next race would be, and she told him it would be held in 2 months. The student told Errol to forget about trying to join that one since mastering flight would take at least 6 months. He gave Errol an entire year to train and challenged him to next year's race, then flew off. But Arel already had an idea for a spell combination that could mimic flight. Colette thought he was planning for next year, but he told her he'd join the upcoming race because he'd master flight in just 2 months. A few days later, Colette, Kova, and Kaido were walking through the halls of the Green Magic School. Kaido asked why Colette insisted on bringing them out at night when they were supposed to be asleep. She told them she'd forgotten something and wanted to retrieve it. She'd asked them to come along because she didn't want to get lost in the dark. Kaido understood but pointed out it wasn't necessary to bring him specifically, since they could have just gone together. Colette revealed that Kova insisted he come along for extra protection. Kova explained that it was safer to move as a group since there were rumors of ghosts appearing in the school after dark. Kaido started to panic, so Kova teased him, calling him the same scared little kid who used to be too afraid to go to the bathroom alone. Kaido got mad, accusing her of being a hypocrite for calling him a coward when she'd been hiding behind Colette since they arrived at school. Kova denied it, saying she was just making sure no one attacked Colette from behind. They bickered until Colette told them to stop, worried their noise would attract the ghost. They turned toward her and saw a ghost entering through the window behind her. The ghost opened the window and covered Colette's mouth so she wouldn't scream. Kaido threatened to burn him if he didn't let her go, so the ghost released her and asked them to calm down. Kaido recognized his voice, and Darrell pulled down his hood to reveal his face. He asked what they were doing in the school courtyard, but they asked him the same thing. He said he'd been practicing flight magic since he decided to join the race. Kova realized he was the reason behind all the ghost rumors around campus, while Kaido worried that Arel was exhausting himself and not sleeping enough. Arel assured them he was getting plenty of rest, and mentioned that he'd just been sleeping a moment ago. Kaido didn't understand what he meant, so Arel explained that he'd trained himself to practice while sleeping. Kova insisted that kind of sleep didn't count as real rest. Kaido admitted he'd never be as strong as Arel, but promised to start training himself too. Kova told him to overcome his fear of ghosts tests first, but Kaido denied being afraid of them. Silently, Kova and Colette both vowed to train on their own as well to get better at spellcasting. They left the school, said their goodbyes, and Arel wondered what to do next now that he was still awake. He visited Latalia and asked for permission to enter the library. She asked what he was looking for, and he told her he wasn't searching for any particular book, but wanted to read every book they didn't have at home since any of them might contain useful information for the future. Latalia offered him a job at the library since, unlike others, he didn't show discomfort when seeing books about black magic. The next day at the Red Magic School, the teacher is writing spell lines on the board when Arel notices a mistake in one of them. Kaido praises him for catching it, and Arel explains that he has to memorize all the spells because they don't come to him naturally. Kaido asks how he memorized them all, and Arel says he created shorter versions of the long spells to help him remember them more easily. He declares that he can shorten the teacher's spell lines by a third, and the teacher overhears him. The teacher asks him to write his version on the board, and Arel confidently steps forward. The teacher analyzes Arel's spell and admits that it's theoretically correct, but points out that it lacks safety measures, meaning it would explode if it failed. Arel explains that he doesn't need protection from the explosion because he has divine protection. The teacher tells him that divine protection doesn't prevent pain, but Arel insists he can handle it as long as he won't die. Realizing that Arel has full control over his spells, the teacher gives him a chance to take the promotion exam to move up to the second class. Royce asks to join the exam as well, and the teacher agrees. He takes them both to the training arena and announces the start of their promotion test. Arel doesn't understand what he's supposed to do, so the teacher explains that once he enters the hallway, a door on the other side will open and release a monster. They must defeat the monster from a distance, using magic, and are warned not to get close since it might attack. When the teacher asks who will go first, Royce volunteers. He goes down the hall, and the teacher signals for the gate to open. A minotaur emerges and attacks immediately. Royce tries to cast an explosion spell against it, but it's too slow to hit the moving target. Arel notices that Royce's spell is stronger than it was in the previous test, and the teacher confirms it's because of his recent studies. Royce tries again and again, but the monster dodges every time. The teacher remarks that the explosion spell isn't suited for a moving target, and that Royce's chances are low because he's panicking. The minotaur reaches him and raises its arm to strike, but then suddenly disappears. Royce breathes a sigh of relief, but the teacher assures him that the school never allows students to be harmed. Royce leaves the hallway, and the teacher tells him he failed but praises him for making it this far, since most students study for 2 years before attempting the test. Royce realizes the teacher wanted to show him how much he still had to learn before calling himself a real wizard. He vows to continue studying magic humbly until he reaches that level. The teacher then calls Errol into the hallway for his turn, saying they've prepared a monster of the same type. When the gate is raised, a larger and darker minotaur comes out. A guard rushes to inform the teacher, Bacchus, that they accidentally let a superior minotaur into the arena. The powerful minotaur attacks Arel, who casts 2 fire spear spells to pin it down, but the creature easily dodges them by jumping aside. The teacher urges Arel to get out before the monster breaks through the student's protective barrier, but Arel refuses, confident he can defeat it. The fire spears curve back and strike the minotaur from behind, pinning it in place. The teacher realizes Arel gave them a tracking effect. Arel then finishes the job using an explosion spell. When he exits the hallway, Teacher Bacchus declares him successful and invites him to join the second class the next day. Kaido passes the news to Kova and Colette, but Arel feels unsatisfied because he wants to take the promotion exams at the other schools too, confident in his own strength.